Hello and welcome to this episode of Superhero Ethics. Today we are finalizing our conversations about Avatar: The Last Airbender. Those who are watching on video can see that we are a little punchy after doing 4 episodes in a row. But we're here, we're excited. 4 days of episodes in a row, 8 episodes in 4 days. But I have to say, folks, if you go back and listen to how we were all kind of down on this on the first day, and we all kind of like had different things we found, and we're all, I think, kind of like hyping each other up on this a little bit more. I sat down to watch these 2 episodes this morning, and I was genuinely disappointed that I was finishing the show.
Oh, okay.
I think it's going to be another like Riki and I are on one page and Matthew's on another.
It could be because you were saying that sentence and I started to like nod.
Yeah.
Because these last 2 episodes, I was generally disappointed. Period.
Well, yeah, I'm saying before I started these 2 episodes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I was surprised that I was looking forward to watching them as much as I was.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, I was like, because I thought to that point, episode 6 was probably the strongest, and it felt like it had been kind of building momentum and moving more in a direction that I enjoy. And yeah, so I was like, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to wrapping this up. Not so much, already bemoaning that it's going to be like 2 years at least until we see the rest of the story, if anything, but
right.
But I was like looking forward to like, 7 and 8. Okay, finally the North after I guess 6 episodes, but like,
Yeah. Well, and how
3 podcasts, 4 podcasts.
Riki is disappointed. Paul, what do you think of these 2 episodes?
Yeah, that's kind of where I am. I mean, I don't know if disappointed is exactly the word for how I felt, but kind of it felt to me more like the first 2 episodes in terms of how I felt about them. There were like some things that annoyed me. I felt like, some choices that I understand where they're coming from, but that I don't really like. And then, some more of the just like super on the nose, but also just like great acting from several of the performers, and some solid action. And I will say, when Katara fights Paku and they're doing the waterbending, that was the first time I had ever thought, oh, this is just like a splish splash, like.
Yeah, okay. So now you saw what I was seeing.
Now I saw it, and I'm like, you've ruined it for me. But then they went to the ice, and I was like, okay, no, this feels a little more serious now. But it is very dancey, and I did go back and watch the first episode, and I noticed the way they shoot some of the bending, particularly from Katara, early on, especially, where they show the results of the bending, but not the physical motion of the bender. And that is an editing thing that feels a little jarring to me. And I wonder if it's because they didn't feel like, the motions from the actors were what they wanted, whereas like with some of the other characters, it feels like with Zuko and I think Azula, like they really show, them doing the thing and the bending along with their motions, as opposed to the water bending until that fight with Paku. It felt to me like it was not like they weren't showing the bending, they were showing the bent, essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's something on rewatch I probably want to pay attention to is specifically Katara, because she's clearly gotten more powerful as a bender across this season. And I would be curious to just like watch her form and see if that has become, like tighter, like if her form has become tighter as she's practiced it more. And
that would make sense in a story sense.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I'm curious, Matthew, did you know that this show was going to be in basically like 2 episode arcs?
No, I had no idea.
So we got lucky.
Yeah.
That has worked out pretty well for us. I will say, I'm not incredibly surprised by that. Like, I think that is a fairly common, especially for a season that is 8 episodes long. You know, if this were 9 episodes long, I would have said like we probably should do 3 at a time or something like that,
Right.
because just,
Yeah.
but
But it's very deliberate, because like looking
Yeah.
at the credits,
Mhm.
each 2-episode arc is directed by the same person.
Yeah.
And
I hadn't realized that.
4 directors.
Yeah,
The
no, I
season.
definitely did not I did not realize it was going to be anywhere to that extent. I think it worked out really well, though.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Sometimes,
just got lucky.
sometimes it's good to be lucky.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Riki, why would you say you were disappointed?
Oh gosh.
Why
No,
weren't you? Maybe.
Let's not start with that. I don't know. I want to start. Paul mentioned performances, and throughout the season, I think we've all been very high on the Zhao performance from Ken Leung, and he absolutely nailed it in this episode. In what is what I hope will go down as one of the greatest villain performances of all time. And on this show, and in Star Wars, we talk about villains, and sometimes we prefer like complex villains, or villains that we can relate to. And Zhao is just like a completely unrelatable, like unrepentant villain, in my opinion. And it works for this character, and it works for the performance that he gave. Just like the over the top yelling of like, I am the Moonslayer. It was just absolutely pitch perfect.
Yeah, I loved it. I would even, well, maybe I'm going to sound like a horrible person here. I don't mean relatable in the way that like Magneto or someone like that is sort of like, okay, I think I understand your goals. I just maybe don't love your methods, or I recognize that the writer doesn't want me to love your methods, or whatever it is. So I would not say he's relatable at all in that. I do think that I had some like, to me, especially by the end, and that's part of the great acting, he feels like he's cracked. Like he has somewhat lost his hold on, and kind of, the kind of delusions of grandeur, I'm the Slayer, I'm all of this. He is not the kind of like cool, calm person he was. Ain't cool and calm, but he's definitely kind of a little bit gone off the deep end by the end. But to me, part of what I saw was, Azula is manipulating him. He's being given all these different orders from he's part of a Fire Lord system where everybody is basically taught like, do all you can to advance, including stabbing the other guy in the back. So yeah, again, like I'm not like, oh, poor Zhao, but I am like, yeah, like in a system that treats people like this, some people are going to crack like this. I totally believe that, and it made him, to me, a much more interesting villain, even so, because like then it's not just like mwahaha ultimate power. It's like I completely see where he got to this point. But that point was, you're right, just purely like malevolent, destruction that had to be stopped.
But I mean, he did have that. At one point, he declared that he was going to be the Fire Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm agreeing with you.
So one of the subtle things that they did previously with Zhao that I think really paid off and I enjoyed is, I think it was maybe like Iroh talking to Lieutenant G and Zuko or something like that, but basically like called him out as an incompetent war leader. Right?
Yeah.
Or like a not very good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like called his skills into question. And from that moment forward, like I examined the character in that lens, and it just all made sense. Like he's a mid to low level commander in a remote outpost who kind of got lucky with, the Avatar landing in his lap, and then tried to insert himself into a system and just was like not good enough, either militarily or politically, and got played by all the sides and thought he could do this thing and just failed. And he's so interesting to me in that way, that he reached for the moon literally, and couldn't hold on to it.
So I'm going to draw a potentially very weird comparison, and you might laugh me out of the room, and that's fine. Well, I'm in my own room. I'm not leaving it. But you know
that
what I
would
mean.
be really impressive if we laughed you out of the room. That would be high-level airbending there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But to some extent, I'm kind of thinking of this whole system. It's very similar to what the world of the Sith is like. Of the strong are rewarded, the weak are punished, and so you're constantly like encouraged to like cut corners and do everything you can to try and get better and stuff like that. And as you said, the people who try to work in the system and fail, he kind of reminds me of Darth Maul. Like Maul is much more complicated, but the whole, especially his speech to the end at Zuko, it kind of reminded me of like Maul talking to Ahsoka or some of the others, where it like he didn't seem like he was lying to Zuko to try to fuck with him. He was trying to be like, I have now come to realize, that I reached for this and I failed and I was manipulated by Azula and all of this. And it's like, we're all just cogs in this horrible machine. And just his whole, like, I want, especially that line about wanting to be the Fire Lord, where does that come from? It's just that like, he's gotten onto the ladder and now he has this opportunity for greatness. And so he's going to take it as far as it can.
In terms of Star Wars characters, I thought he was very similar to Orson Krennic.
Yeah, actually, I can see that one really well too.
Krennic had these delusions of grandeur of what he was going to be able to accomplish with the Death Star project, and then Tarkin just like yoinked the rug right from under him, and he got hoisted by his own petards and just killed by the Death Star. That was actually the one thing I didn't like, the change that they made to how Zhao dies in the end. I mean, I presume he's dead.
Presumably dies.
Maybe they'll change that in the future. But in the animated show, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was killed by the spirit, right? Like either the moon spirit or the ocean spirit, like yanks him away into the spirit world.
I thought he just like fell to his presumed doom, and it was as a result of the damage. I have not recently rewatched it, as you two have, though.
Yeah, my memory is he kind of falls to the mercy of the spirits.
Right. And Zuko actually, like, they were fighting, and then the spirits grab him, and Zuko actually reaches out and tries to save him, which was a nice like Zuko moment. Like even in the midst of combat, it's like, I want to try to save your life. Because I think in the Legend of Korra, there's a brief cameo of Zhao wandering in the fog of lost souls, which gets got used in this show, but I think originally it was from there. And he's just wandering around, still muttering to himself, like, "I am the Moon Slayer."
Yeah, here it was interesting. I mean, it was definitely different. It's a choice, and I thought it was interesting that Iroh is the one who fireballed him.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like he did that not just to save Zuko from potentially getting killed by Zhao, but to save Zuko from killing Zhao.
Could be, yeah.
Like, yeah, I don't know. I kind of felt like
Zuko's back was to him at that moment, right?
Yeah.
I think it was like he had turned away from Zhao, and then Zhao stood up and was gonna attack him.
Yeah, and he didn't call out to him or anything. He just kind of roasted him.
I've loved the ideas behind how it all ended. Like, and I loved where Zhao was coming from, but I kind of felt they stumbled on the execution in a couple of ways. And this is one of those examples where I felt like doing it this way, we now have Iroh straight up killing somebody, which, like, I think he would in an absolute kill or be killed situation, he would kill, but I do think he probably, as much as Aang, is going to try to avoid that at absolutely all costs. But more to the point, Zuko here has learned a lesson of compassion. He doesn't kill Zhao. Yeah. And for the show to say Zuko let him live and would have died because of that if Iroh hadn't saved him, that doesn't really encourage, by the way, you did the right, like, it's basically saying, like, Zuko almost got himself killed by being compassionate. And I don't think the show was trying to say he shouldn't have been compassionate. So that part of the execution felt weird. But also the whole scene where he winds up killing the fish. First of all, my memory, and I saw the show only the animated a couple of days ago. This whole like
he just puts it in a bag, right?
Yeah, he kind of like kidnaps it and like therefore takes it out of the water. But part of that is because in the original, they don't take this mortal form for a day.
Right.
They're always swimming around in there.
Yeah.
And I'll admit the idea that these two spirits want to experience life as mortal on Earth. And so every day they do that by swimming in a circle in a pond with the only other living thing being their other spirit they spend all their time with. You kind of lost me a little bit on that, but fine. I can let go of that. He says he's going to do this. Iroh is standing right behind him and says, if you do, I will blast you.
Yeah.
And so Iroh just sits there and watches while he reaches into the pool, picks up the fish, puts it in the bag, and then is about to kill it when Iroh decides I have to walk around, so I'm now on a 90-degree angle with him, where actually now the guards can see if I'm about to do this, and then he blasts him, and of course it doesn't work because Zhao was still able to get to the knife. Like, it felt kind of like the Mace Windu wind-up, you know? Try the emotional content of this could be great, but if I'm stuck thinking about the physics of the fight, and not in a like interesting way, but just in a like Darth, I don't know where Darth Vader is in Obi-Wan kind of a way, that's not well done.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That whole thing felt, I mean, if he's going to kill Zhao later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why not just kill him in the hot air balloon? When he says he's going to literally murder the moon. You know what I mean? Like, I guess there were a few of them in the air balloon. It wasn't just the two of them, but I kind of felt like, wait, you're really going to take Iroh up into an air balloon and then tell him that you're going to kill the moon? Like, you think this is going to work out for you? And then, like, it worked out fine for a little while for him. But
I mean,
I'm with you with the Mace Windu.
I didn't pick up on the Iroh walking around. What I picked up on was the after Iroh declares, like, if you do, I have to stop you.
Yeah. But he didn't even say I have to stop you. It was like, I have to punish you if you do it, basically.
Right.
But Zhao at that point is like, well, you're coming with me because you are the one who can identify the spirits.
Right.
Because you're so knowledgeable about spirits. And then he doesn't.
Right.
Like, Zhao just comes upon the lake and sees the two and is like, oh, yin and yang. I identified the spirits. Cool.
Right.
Something is off with that whole sequence, I think.
Yeah.
And when I see this kind of stuff now, my instinct nowadays goes to rewrites. Like, someone rewrote something and they had to like change the order or something like that. It's like, well, we need to still have a scene with them talking on the balloon, etc.
Right.
Right. But so something was off. I don't think it was like all written out that way. This is just what we ended up with, is my guess.
Yeah. I agree with that. And even having it be the balloons, like, it's straight out of the show, but it's like in season 3 that Sokka sees that this technology he helped create is now being used, and it felt kind of a waste almost to use it this early.
Yeah,
No.
Go ahead.
The balloon thing that happens in the same episode, in the Mechanist episode.
We see that they have balloons and they're starting to use them, but they don't.
Oh, no.
They don't actually use them yet, right? There's
I apologize.
a teaser for that kind of.
The Mechanist uses a balloon to defend the air temple that they were holed up in.
Yeah.
And then it crashes, and then then the Fire Nation
cover it. Right. Reverse
right.
engineer it, basically.
Yeah. But there was more of a kind of like season-long or multi-season-long setup of that.
Yeah.
Like, they recover the balloon. I'm sure, like, Chekhov's hot air balloon.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I do just want to quickly say, speaking of technology, not only do we get to have the fun of these conversation and Paul laughing at my bad transitions, but you guys can join us in the conversation too. We had some feedback yesterday. We have some feedback today. I've seen people start to comment on things. Would love to know what you think. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Do you have a question you want to hear us discuss? We'll definitely be doing a feedback episode about Avatar, as well as bringing in some other guests and things like that. On the screen now if you're watching, but also just in the show notes or on our website, theethicalpanda.com. You'll find all the ways to reach us. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and email. Let us know what you think. We get some more commentary that we're going to read out in the next couple of weeks. We'd love to hear what you say. Also, if you want more content like this, when we're not doing an episode every day for 4 days, we generally do bonus content at the end of most episodes. Sometimes it's related to the topic. Sometimes it's a little bit of a tangent. Sometimes we plan for it to be related to the topic, but it's Paul, so we go off on a crazy tangent anyway. And for only $5 a month, you get the bonus content, you get ad-free content, and you get to help support the podcast. It's a really great way to help us keep the lights on and keep us doing what we're doing. So please think about, if you like the podcast, YouTube, like, subscribe, do all those things, write us reviews, share this with people. It's such a good way for more people to find out and join the conversation. Let us know what you think and become a member. Back to our regular scheduled podcast, already in progress.
I think your transitions are wonderful, and I prefer to call them secants instead of tangents, because they all go through the circle, not off into
there you
space.
Go. There you go.
It hits the circle in 2 spots.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so I guess I never really gave my kind of overall feeling on these episodes.
Yeah.
Some of the storylines that I wanted done well, I thought were done very well. I thought the stuff with Yue was very good. I really believed her and not Zuko, Sokka falling for each other. The idea that she's been dreaming about him for a while, which I think is kind of implied but not outright stated when she says, "'Cause you're the boy of my dreams."
Right.
But also, like, this is a woman who's half the moon, so like she gets to be a little flighty. And I did really like, I want to ask Riki about one thing about this, which I'll do at the end of this, her being that 3-tailed fox that we'd seen early on in the last couple of episodes in the spirit world, and him making that connection because of the medallion that she wears and that the fox had on one of its tails. So I liked all that. I thought that was all really good. I agree with you. I thought Zhao was phenomenal. And I again thought Zuko was amazing. I didn't need the sexism of the Water Tribe. And Mary was with me. And I often kind of think, like, I'm not going to look to like the one woman I'm watching at the moment and let's say like Mary be the authoritative voice. But I remember, like, when the whole stuff about Sokka came out, for those who don't know, there were rumors beforehand that Sokka's sexism was going to be cut out. A lot of people were upset about this because they said it's really important for Sokka's growth. But then I also saw a lot of folks, including particularly women, often saying, look, it would actually be nice for us to see a woman hero who doesn't have to overcome the sexism and misogyny of those around her. And when you don't have it as part of Sokka's story, putting it in here, it is truer to the original, but it also felt kind of like, well, why are you cutting one but not cutting the other? I will, though, say that I thought it was well done if you're going to have it in there. And I thought the way of not only does like he recognize her talent, but that all of the younger people are like, well, no, that's dumb. We just saw you do that really cool thing throwing ice discs. We want you to learn. Like, I loved that. And that the older guy, I want to say Puka, but I know that's wrong, that he kind of comes to recognize how much others respect her was also really important. And I really liked that her betrothed was named Huang, I think was his name.
Who's what?
Yue's betrothed, the guy she was supposed to marry. Han. Thank you. Terrible names. I apologize.
Han.
I really liked that. I really liked that he was just a decent guy. Like, he wasn't a jerk to Sokka. He wasn't super jealous. He really liked Yue, and he was sad that she didn't choose him. But then he just went on with his day. And like when he recognized that she was going to be the Sokka, he was like, yeah, okay, be happy. And Sokka, please protect her because she matters to me. And I just, after seeing so much like love triangle jealousy nonsense, that alone like I really loved in the episode. And like there was a lot of problems had in the episode, but that alone kind of made it like, okay, I'm here for this. I like the way they're going.
I liked what they did with Han.
Yeah.
Oh no, now I'm alone.
Oh no. And there was a spot where there was a line about Zuko being alone, and I felt like it was like a call out to the Zuko alone episode.
Yes, it definitely was.
Yeah, I liked what they did with Han. He may have shot first, but I guess Sokka shot last. Anyway, I liked Sokka and Yue, their whole interaction, and Arnook, is that the chief's name?
Arnook is the chief.
Yeah,
And
Yue's
Yue's
father.
father.
the way-
Paku is the old
Yeah.
master.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Arnook talking to Sokka after, Princess Moon becomes the moon again. Yue means moon, for what it's worth,
Nice.
in Chinese. Well, in Mandarin more specifically. But it, like, yeah, I found the whole, like, Northern Water Tribe sexism plotline super cringe. As did the one authoritative voice in my household who watched that episode with me. And it felt... I also feel like the payoff didn't feel as great of Katara becoming a master waterbender, because I feel like they shortchanged her arc in this season. Like a lot of what I've complained about with a lot of other female characters is when they get shortchanged in terms of, like, people are like, oh, they're too powerful, blah blah blah. We did, like, I want to see the training. That's one of the things that I loved about the original. But it's not just Katara here, it's also Aang. We don't see Aang training in that way, right? And we don't see
I will say,
waterbending.
I did think that they had clearly listened to us and then gone back in time and shot the episode, because they specifically call out that Aang hasn't been training this whole time,
right?
Which
exactly.
I liked.
Yeah. They drop that in. They lampshade it, kind of, right? They're like, we know that we didn't do this thing the way they did, and so and then the worst instance of that was, this is like for the whole team, episode 8, the beginning of it, when they execute that excellent attack on a Fire Navy ship, and like they're just a well-oiled machine, and it's like, and Han talking to Sokka about all this experience they have. Like, we didn't get to see that. I didn't feel that from the episodes that we saw. And I feel like, I understand it's only 8 episodes, but like, it feels like if you're gonna rush things, rush the Northern Water Tribe stuff in the North, have that be 1 episode instead of 2 episodes, and like, just give us a little more of the characters' training, of them learning to work together, like as a team, without Aang turning into another Avatar or something, And it just like, I love them as a team, and I love the training arcs, and it felt very neglected on both those fronts. And so then when Katara is like, no, I'm a major badass, it's like, okay, I know you're a major badass, but I want to see that journey, because to me, that journey is one of the most powerful things about a character story. If a character becomes a master and they weren't a master at the beginning of the story, like, show me. And I feel like they didn't. And I mean, obviously Aang didn't really learn anything. And like, okay, I guess there's 2 more seasons, maybe, or more, but
he learned the power of friendship.
He learned the power of friendship and something about the past and the future and 100 years. But yeah, overall, it's just the writing is what I feel really has not been to my taste. And somehow many of the performances have managed to rise above that. Like, I was listening to the words Gyatso was saying in the first episode, and I was like, these could have been delivered like flatly, and it would have been like brutal, I think. But like, somehow he like gets so much out of it, and there's a number of performers who've done that. And for me, like, the biggest reason I hope they do more seasons is like, I want to see these actors play those characters. I just hope maybe there's some notes, maybe not from producers, maybe I don't even know. I'm not super optimistic about the writing, but like, so many of the performances have been really great and really nuanced. And even if we don't see any more of like Ken Leung, like at least we'll see like more Dallas Liu and like, you know, others.
Yeah.
Anyway. So Riki, you didn't like Han.
Oh boy.
Or
Okay.
what happened? What they
Riki
did.
is solidly on Team Greedo.
Okay. I'm gonna like try to like go point by point.
Okay.
First major point. I don't like that they killed Han.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah, that's fair.
100%.
And more specifically, I don't like that they killed Han and, to my knowledge, unnamed Water Tribe kid who looked up to Katara.
Right, yes.
Like both of them. I think there was like this need to show like how serious war is and like there were casualties even among like people you met and liked.
Right.
Why both of them, right? Like I think one of them I can understand, makes sense, like if you want to be this darker, grittier show showing the consequences of war and like here's this person. I think it should have been the kid, right? Like Katara seeing that kid who looked up to her and like called her master and all that was like a good moment for her. And then to see that potential snuffed like would have like driven home to her the consequence of war, right? So like why also Han at the same, like they kind of, in my recollection, they like walked past one body and then like walked past the other one.
Yeah, they're like
and it kind of like lessened the impact of all that. So I didn't understand that. I'm okay with love triangles, Matthew, because they are often necessary shortcuts for getting characters to where they need to be. And I think minus that love triangle being present, I personally did not buy into this romance. Like I didn't feel like it got to where it needed to be for That's Rough Buddy to have an impact in the future. I just like did not feel that this relationship between these two had time to percolate and develop to the point where she's going to be like Sokka's lost love.
Right.
I agree that it did feel rushed, but I don't think him being a jerk in a jealous way would have helped that. I can't imagine how that would have helped it. To me, that would have been like, I feel like if there had been that, I'd be even more upset that we didn't get more time with them, because I'd be like, why are you wasting time on this jealous ex instead of just letting us see them develop this love that is supposed to be so amazing that he's so upset about it later.
But was original Han, like animated Han, was he a jerk? I don't feel like he was a jerk. Yeah, he was kind of like jealous and possessive of Yue and was defensive against Sokka, but I don't feel like, I don't know, like the line between jerk or bully, I guess, like he was set up as a rival and acted in that way, but never, in my opinion, maliciously, I guess.
I'm just really bored of men being jealous. Like, and I mean, like, low-key kind of offended at the idea that if two men are both interested in the same woman, we have to be rivals. We have to be jealous of each other. We have to be jerks to each other. And like, clearly, I don't believe that, but I feel like so much media goes in that direction that I get, like, I hear what you're saying. I just think for me, it is just so refreshing to see something that's not that.
I guess for me, that's like a really good reason to tell new stories.
Yeah.
Like with different characters and not to just like keep remaking things that have elements that you don't love in them, you know?
Yeah.
Just quick aside, there's a YouTuber / author named Jiran J. Zhao, whose last name is the same as like Admiral Zhao. And she did a bunch of videos about like a bunch of the cultural aspects of the original animated series. And she has a novel called Iron Widow that does feature a love triangle, except it's a throuple love triangle.
Nice.
So,
nice.
you know, it's a different take on, you know. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you in terms of like, that's not a story that I enjoy and I don't really want to see it a whole bunch of times, but like also, I mean, I didn't feel the absence of it here, but it's just one of the things about adapting something and changing the story is it's like they're gonna change certain things and not other things, and it's like, well, why is that what you're changing, and then why are you leaving this, and then it just like, I don't know, I almost wish like they made it more different in some ways,
Yeah.
you know. And I'm not a fan of the kind of making it more dark or whatever, because like the big problem I have with the series as it is, this edition of it, is that I feel like they're trying to be like very thoughtful in terms of like what the ramifications are of telling this kind of story versus that kind of story, but then they're also trying to be kind of manipulative and abusive in terms of like, you need to see this violence, like you need to see someone's skull immolated on screen, while also writing dialogue that feels like it considers the audience to be of a very low level of intellectual development. You know, like they have to explain to you what everybody is thinking and everything that's going on all the time, or like maybe you'll miss something.
I had every other episode till now, when you talked about the dialogue, I had kind of like vague senses of what you mean, but I hadn't noticed it as much. This episode, there were a couple of lines, particularly from I agree with you, from the monk from the last episode, but this one especially from Zhao, and then later from Azula, that just felt so like. And I watch with subtitles because like I have some audio processing stuff, and sometimes like there's other noise, and there were times where like I would listen to them while getting so much emotion from the actor, and then be reading the words and be like, did I really just feel that from those dumb words? Like, really?
Right. Yeah.
Especially like Azula, when I forget what it is she says when she takes off the mask, but it just was like,
oh, at the end.
Yeah, all you had to do was take off the mask, and I would have understood everything of the words you just repeated. Like,
right? Yeah. Just lines that it's like, we don't need a line here.
Yeah.
Just show us their face. Like trust your actors, right? There's like not trusting the audience, but then there's also not trusting your performers. Like there's spots where you can have a line in a script, and then you can shoot the scene, and after you shoot the scene, you can look at it and go, I don't need this line. Like their face said everything. There were one or two that Iroh said too. Oh, there was one where he has a tear, and I'm like, I don't need the tear to see that he's crushed. You know, it's like that it feels. It was in when Zuko maybe blows up, but then doesn't blow up, and then he's just like talking to him casually on the boat later. I'm like, we don't even get to see that Iroh now knows that Zuko's not dead. He's just like, oh, Zuko, yes, this is what's happening. It's like,
no, I think it was when Zuko is leaving that you see the tear.
Oh,
I thought it was when he killed Zhao.
You know what? I'm guessing there were a lot of tears, and we noticed different ones.
That's possible.
But the line there is, it was Zuko says like Liu Ten would have been proud.
Oh yeah,
to call you his father or something like that. That line was so bad.
Especially
like it was a good moment, and it still gets to me because the moment was good. But I was
yeah.
Did you just say that?
Especially like would have.
Right.
Is a specific grammatical tense that implies a possibility. Like,
I don't know if that's
being proud if he saw you right now. Acceptable, fine.
There's a possibility that is like intentionally bad because like it's Zuko, right? And he's still processing and like still not quite doesn't know how to show his emotions or like speak his emotions.
Are you telling me that he might say that was rough, buddy?
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the same character.
I think someone looked at a draft of the script and went, "That's rough, buddy," and they're like, we're leaving it."
Yeah,
but that line was rough.
The line was rough, and like somehow it didn't totally ruin the moment because like the performances and like it's not just the performances though. It's like actually everything visual. Like not everything. Like Yue's wig looks ridiculous, but like overall the costumes and the makeup and largely the effects and like especially like the settings. There's things that I feel like are literally too dark in that sort of like they're trying to do that way, and I don't understand why people keep doing that. but like overall, I think the visual look, the music, I feel like most aspects of filmmaking have been executed at a very high level in this series. And like, if they just like get Tony Gilroy to like do a polish or something. I don't know. Like, it feels to me like just trust your audience and trust your actors.
Yeah, I think it's true because, like I said, if you told me that if you took a show that was originally aimed not entirely at children by any means, but was like, I know lots of people who were watching this when they were 6 or 7 years old and absolutely fell in love with it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you told me that something that was originally written in a way that like, kids that young could really love and fully understand, and now you made a more adult version of it, but that is less subtle, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's just incongruous, those two aspects.
Let me shift to another. Oh, go ahead, Ricky.
Well, I want to address like the whole thing of writing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was doing some research, and what I discovered was that the two co-creators of Avatar, like the original series, Brian Konietzko and Michael Dante DiMartino. Mm-hmm. So those two were originally on this project, I believe, as writers, and they still have credits, teleplay credits for episode 1 and episode 6.
Yeah.
But then partway through, they both chose to leave the project
like 2 years in.
The classic creative differences.
Yeah.
Right.
Which who knows what that means, right? Like they're not going to say because they don't want to like badmouth this. Like it's still, they still love Avatar. I'm sure they wanted to succeed despite leaving the project.
Or they've signed NDAs and would love to badmouth it. I mean, but yeah, you're probably right. But I'm also saying
they posted about it on social media, and they're actually making more Avatar-related stuff with Nickelodeon.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
As part of not with Netflix. It's like
yeah.
But this is like these are the things outside of like the fantasy world, like as fans, as people who consume the media, we have to take into consideration when we're like, oh, the writing is bad.
Yeah.
Is it bad because, these two left the project? There are still like bits and pieces that they wrote, and then other people had to come in and say, okay, how do we fill the gaps that they left behind? Or like, because they had creative differences, like we want to go in a different direction, but now we have less time to like fully flesh out and, rewrite entire scripts. Yeah. And that's not, I when I see stuff like this happen, like Secret Invasion was a complete mess because of rewrites. It's not. We're critical of the final product that we're watching, but again, like as I always say, like these are human beings who have a job they're trying to do, and sometimes the circumstances don't allow you to do your job to the best of your abilities, like due to time constraints. Oh, yeah. So I want to make sure, like that we're saying, like, hey. This didn't work out the way we wanted it to necessarily, but I still have hope for the future.
No, and that's very fair. And I think it's also, and I may have slipped up on this, and if so, definitely please call me out and how it happens in the future. I think it's very important that there's a difference between saying the writing or even better, probably more accurately, the dialogue wasn't very good versus the writers screwed up. Because it could well be the writers themselves, as you say. It could be that the original script the writers gave them was a lot better, but the producers, as Paul was implying, might have like changed it down somewhat. We've talked a long time about like, did Natalie Portman just walk onto the set of Attack of the Clones and decide, you know what, I'm a world-class actor, but I'm not going to do that this time? Yeah, probably more likely it was her directing or the writing or the editing that made it seem like that. I think you're making a very, very good point.
It was the writing and directing. Because George Lucas is like, no, Hayden Christensen did exactly what I wanted him to do. It's like, all right, well then.
Yeah, okay, so that's not the best
on you, George.
But my point, though, is just this, is that in a creative project where so many different people are involved, and I think, Riki, I have not been as cognizant of this as I should be, and I'm really appreciating you bringing this up. And you can tell me if I'm missing your point entirely, but I think this is where you're going. I feel like it's a really good idea for people who are being critical of it, like, criticize the product. don't try and get into, unless they specifically tell you what they did. Like, was it this specific person? Because even if we know that it is the writers, like, I care in so much as if I see those writers on another project, I might not watch it or I might have hesitations, but I'm not going to go out and start adding those writers on Twitter when I bash this. Not that I'm going to bash it, but
yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, we talked earlier about Zhao and just like how perfect he was. I think if you read his dialogue like on a piece of paper, like on the script, some of it is probably like what we would call bad writing, right? But he, like Ken Leung, understood the assignment, and he took that and he owned it, and he took some hammy lines and just like did a Palpatine, right? Like unlimited power. If you read that on a script, you're like, would he really like shout this? But when Ian McDiarmid shouts it in the way he did, you're just like, oh yeah, this is great.
No. I love that you are, but that was not my response when Ian McDiarmid did it, and I'm guessing it was not Paul's.
Oh, I love that moment.
I mean,
I laughed at that moment.
It definitely happened. I will say, it could have been worse. I don't think it could have been delivered better. I'll just leave my opinion at that.
Yeah. It could have been a mwahaha at the end.
Yeah. No, just in terms of delivery, it's convincing that version of that character. Yeah. Anyway, I think, to me, I think criticizing the writing compared to criticizing the writers, and it's a fine line, and it's like, well, I mean, people generally take pride in their work and take identity from it sometimes, but like, obviously, like, don't at people, don't harass people about it. And when it comes to anything that ends up on screen, unless it's like a one person is clearly in charge and has final cut, basically, like, you don't know whether the credited writer came up with a given line. You don't know whether some staff writer who's uncredited or is in the later credits came up with a given line. You don't know whether the showrunner, whether a producer suggested it, whether an actor ad-libbed it, or whether it was ADR afterwards by like a totally other writer who was like ghostwriting or whatever,
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, I deeply agree with, like, don't harass anybody for their involvement in like making art anyway, outside of art that's like aimed at people and oppressing them or whatever. But just like
Ben Shapiro's rap, you can harass everybody else.
Yes, please. But I think, like, criticizing the product is like, however those words ended up on the printed page, or they decided these are the words that the actor's going to speak, like, I think better choices could have been made in that regard. But the same writers might be able to come up with better ones in the next season, possibly.
Yeah.
And for me, this art, right, of television and movies, like, the more I consume, the more I understand, like, I'm not a film student, but I understand, like, the process is so collaborative between everyone. So it's like I said, like, a good performer can elevate bad writing. I think a bad performer could, devalue good writing. So it's like, like the moment in Andor, Stellan Skarsgård's monologue, right? That was good writing plus good performer, and possibly other elements added to that. It's like a perfect mixture.
Yeah.
And so for me, my biggest thing is, does it take me out of the moment, right? Like the Zuko Lu-Ten would have been proud to call you his father. Just like it was a good moment, but it took me out of the moment right there. I don't like that happened. Whoever is responsible, like, it just didn't work for me.
Right. Yeah. You want to savor the moment and enjoy it.
Yeah. It should have been a better moment, more impactful. Like I think
Definitely.
I started to cry, and then I kind of like I
Yeah.
can't cry to that line.
Right.
I might have still cried.
Yeah.
Might have cried anyway.
So I want to shift gears a bit and ask Riki you a specific question, although Paul, also interested in your thoughts on this. And again, this is one of those, like, I don't want you to be the authoritative voice, of any community, but you've talked before about how you as a Japanese American person have that context you bring. I don't know much about the stories of the nine-tailed fox and the role they play in Japanese mythology, but I do know that it's like a specific character. And obviously a lot of things in this show, both animated and live action, are inspired by different aspects of different parts of Asian cultures. Some very directly, like you said, with some of the names, some kind of more obtusely. I'm curious. You may not know any more about that particular myth than I do, but I'm just curious if it is something you know about, and I don't know if maybe there is a related story about a three-tailed fox, or if like seeing them have a three-tailed fox felt like a legitimate way of referencing the myth, but of making it their own, or if it felt like problematic because it was taking something that wasn't their own and changing it, kind of an appropriate manner. Like, did you have any thoughts on this?
No.
Okay, that's totally fair. It happened for 5 seconds on screen, so I didn't,
I like literally no. I'm familiar that there are foxes in mythology with multiple tails, probably mostly because of Pokemon. There's a Pokemon called Nine.
Like that's why you're familiar with it, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, like, for a follow-up episode, I'm happy to do research on it because I like research.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any feelings on it at the moment.
Okay, well, that's like, totally fair.
I will say I didn't like that, like what happened in the show, because I mean, first off, again, like I'm gonna talk about a line of dialogue. The "you're the boy in my dreams" was like so cringy.
Yeah.
And to me it felt like we were talking earlier about the relationship and how it didn't get there for me. This felt like an attempt at a shortcut that to me is not the right way to do a shortcut, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean, maybe for her, but for him, like, she was a fox, like an animal fox. Yeah. So it's like, how can you have feelings for her, like, based on that?
Like, right? Those kind of feelings.
There's some Google searches that you clearly haven't done and probably shouldn't do that they might answer that question.
Don't do that sort of research.
Yeah. I guess, again, like, I guess it makes a little more sense for her.
Yeah.
That she has seen him, like physically in the spirit world. But he never saw her. Like, he makes the connection and is like, oh, like, you were the fox. And it's like, but what does that do for you, right?
Here's odd, because I actually thought it did more for him, because I do feel that, like, this was his moment of probably greatest disorientation since this guy woke up out of the ice after 100 years and the flying sky bison. Like, he is in the spirit world. He has no idea what's going on. He's complete. Like, he's he's one of those, like, very confident, very fragile kind of types, and this is, I think, him at his most vulnerable. And then here comes this creature that is showing care and consideration and worry about him. And he mostly has to worry about everybody else. And, like, granted, they worry about him too, but I could see him kind of imprinting some way, not in a like, oh, I want to kiss that fox, but in a like, oh, you were like, the feeling of compassion and of protection and of someone's looking after me that I got from that fox is embodied in this very pretty girl. Do I think there's some, like, is that the healthiest basis for a relationship that I've ever heard of? Absolutely not. Do I think it's a reason for a 16-year-old boy who really likes falling in love to fall in love? Yeah, I can see that.
I just have Foxy Lady stuck in my head now. So.
That's totally fair. That's totally fair.
I thought the medallion or whatever that was like on her tail when she was in fox form in the spirit world, and then like showing that, to me that felt like really on the nose. Like that felt like one of those like, oh, did you get it? Where it's like, no, it's the same voice. And then she said recombobulate. Like I feel like that should be enough. I don't think we need a visual thing.
I still don't get it. Why did the fox have that?
I don't know.
Even
I don't know.
Even the closed captions were on the nose because the word recombobulate was in like quote marks.
Right. Yeah. Like, yeah, she was.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I was okay with that part because
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
a weird word, right?
Yeah.
A very
Yeah.
weirdly specific word.
Yeah.
So that worked for me. The hair pin thing doesn't work for me because like, yes, I understood. I understood what they were doing, and I was like, why?
Right.
I'm just saying, I've watched a lot of teen romance and stories like this. This is not scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of like, why are these people in love with each other now?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more about the specifics of this we could say, and we're probably gonna do some follow-up episodes that hopefully one or both of you can take part in. But I want to kind of move to a more overall picture of this, and I want to start by actually this was one of the other great pieces of feedback we got. For some reason, the feedback we kept getting was from people with phenomenal names. So this person was Stressbender, was their name, which
goodness.
I like. And Stressbender writes, "Love the cast, love your coverage. Thank you. 2 questions. Now that you've seen the whole season, do you want to see the next season? And if you wind up not liking this overall, do you want to see someone else take a crack at live action, or should this idea of live action of Avatar just go away forever?"
I don't want to see another version.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that this series gets a 2nd and 3rd season, and I kind of hope they stop there, although they could do a 4th season, which was actually planned, the original animated series. I mostly hope that there's another season because I think a lot of people are involved in the production of it, and a lot of them are doing really good jobs. And it's one of those things where it's just like, it's a lot of performers who haven't often gotten to be the star, and like when Scarlett Johansson gets cast in Ghost in the Shell, one of the arguments that the studios try to make is like, oh, because there's no, commercially viable Asian actresses to play this role, who can carry a blockbuster. And, I feel like, I mean, I don't really know exactly how it did in the box office in terms of like Shang-Chi, but like, I think it was pretty clear, like, yeah, if you give someone a chance to be a star, they can become a star, and then they can carry your movies in the box office. And I mean, I hope Dallas Liu gets like something, gets to be like, I mean, being Zuko in this is an amazing role and an amazing opportunity, but like, I feel like he could definitely star in and carry, whatever kind of. And, there's a lot of people that I think being in a series that doesn't get canceled after 1 season is probably going to be a lot more helpful to their careers and kind of towards like the direction that film and TV go in than being in a series that had very mixed reviews and then got canceled after 1 season.
Yeah.
So
I think if I would love to see Dallas show up in Star Wars somewhere. And frankly, if he I'm a little bit MCU fatigued, but if you tell me he's going to be one of the Young Avengers, I'm a lot more interested in that movie now. If he's going to be some DC character, or if he's going to be in the next Shang-Chi movie, which God help give us to us, even though it sounds like maybe we won't get. But yeah, if he showed up in one of those projects, or just like some other, martial arts, action awesome movie that will delve into some cool things, like I'm there for it.
Wait, he's in the first Shang-Chi movie.
Oh, is he? Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we've talked about
He's Katie's brother, so he should be in the second one too. Maybe he'll have a more prominent role. Who knows?
Yeah, that's fair.
Parking cars is super hard.
It really is.
I mean, in San Francisco, like she's driving cars around San Francisco, like that. Actually, that cannot be an easy place to be like a valet parker if you have to like street park and stuff.
Yeah, where it's like a 45-degree angle often or higher.
Yeah. It's a great city, but it's a terrible place to drive.
Yeah. Riki, what about yourself? Next season, and do you want another live action?
Okay, wait. So the first question was,
First question is, now that you've seen the whole first season, do you want to see the next season?
I'm gonna say no. Okay.
That's fair.
Yeah. I do. Do I want to see the next season? It's like no. Like I end this season like pretty lukewarm, disappointed. It was like an okay show,
Mm-hmm.
but I, I already know the story, and nothing, not enough about this version made me want to continue along these lines
Mm-hmm.
because um, Azula is going to be a more prominent character going forward,
She
and
is the one.
and thus far, neither her performance nor the way that they have written her preemptively into the show makes me excited about her character and her story going forward.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on that. Like, if there is a second season, will I watch it? Of course, because I have to be back here to talk about it. But no, like I'll watch it because it's Avatar. Like I
Right.
Yeah.
do love the overall story. So like I've periodically rewatched the animated one. So like why wouldn't I watch a slightly different version of the
Yeah.
story, right? But it's not, I've mentioned previously on this coverage how One Piece like really changed the dynamic of animated to live action for me personally, and I think for a lot of people, and because of how
Mm-hmm.
well it was done. That show, I'm just like, give me the
Yeah.
next season, give me the next season. There was actually like my Netflix loaded slowly, and my preview thing said One Piece new episode like this Saturday, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And then like the image loaded, and it was the animated One Piece. I was like, "Oh." So that was like absolutely I'm in. Like, give me the next season. This one I'm like, yeah, like I hope I agree with Paul. I hope the creators get a second season and the performers, right? Because I think
Yeah.
they've done a good enough job. There are much worse things that keep getting new seasons. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
why not why not give
Right,
them
right,
like
exactly.
so
Yeah.
it's not offensively bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I'm trying to say, but it's not something that I am like immediately excited for. But
Yeah.
I'm it's not something I'm excited to watch a second
Mm.
season. But I would be excited for them to get one for
Yeah.
everyone involved because yeah, and I completely agree with Paul. Like Dallas Liu, a star is born or a star is
Mm-hmm.
elevated by this. I hope that's one of the major takeaways because he absolutely deserves it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm kind of similar to where both of you are. I If season 2 was on tomorrow, I would definitely watch it. In part because I did enjoy a lot of this, but also because I'm just a very curious person. And if if you show me something that is just someone that basically kind of took a smorgasbord of parts of Avatar and threw them all together on screen and it didn't really have a coherent whole to it, I'd be like, I'm not super excited to watch the next season. And I've definitely seen some stuff like that. Here, I felt like by the end, and maybe this is more so for me than for you guys, I feel like I have a concrete idea of where they're trying to go, particularly with the Ozai Azula Zuko story. It's not where they went in the original. It's not necessarily where I would have wanted them to go. But I'm very curious to see where it winds up. I'm very curious to see they're now doing this different, no, non-training version of Aang, where he's about this different kind of things. I'm curious to see where that goes. So in a vacuum, do I want to see it again? Do I want to see the next season? Yeah, sure. All other things being equal. But I think in the same way, like, if you told me my choice is like another season of this versus another season of like, Umbrella Academy or Stranger Things or, one of the other Netflix shows that I like a lot more, yeah, I'd probably be like, if I have to choose, give me that one. Um, and as for the other question, I think there's only one way I'd ever want to see yet another live action of these stories. Either it's in like 20 years, we've all forgotten and technology's changed so much and we're doing a totally new thing, or it's a fundamentally new story told in this world. Like if you told me someone's doing a live action of like, Sozin and Roku, that could be a cool story to watch. But mostly what I would just want to watch is someone tells me that they're redoing Legend of Korra, and episode 1 opens with Korra and Azumi walking into the sunset, and then they make out on screen for like 3 whole minutes at least, like the best kiss you've ever seen. Korra turns to the camera and says, "Okay, now that you know that happens, let me go back and tell you my story." For those who don't know what I'm talking about, the Korra show ends with a very close relationship between our hero Korra and another woman. The way it was written and shot, they walk into the sunset, turn to each other, and kiss. Because of the sensibilities at the time that the show was made, they cut out the kiss. So I'm kind of being humorous about that, but also being like, the only way I'd want to watch another Korra is if they guarantee me the kiss is happening. And so I think it'd be funny if they did that in the first 3 minutes.
I think it's on YouTube. I think you can watch the.
Well, yeah, you can watch the one that's
original.
edited out. Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah, the editing floor, the cutting room floor.
That follow-up question of like, do I want someone else or a different project? Like, not telling the story of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I agree that there are elements of this world that I think are ripe for more storytelling, and I think that the product is becoming big enough that we are starting to see a picture emerge of the Avatar cinematic universe, because everything has to be a cinematic universe. So yeah, like, I don't know, give me the Cabbage Man story, because he ends up being like a industrialist who founds an empire, like an industrial empire in the Legend of Korra. Give me actually, like, give me the Lieutenant G story, and that's something we could get on this show. So the interesting thing here at the end of this season was Zhao may still be alive. Like, that's unclear, like much more unclear than in the animated show. Lieutenant G may still be alive, and I think like he's a character that just ended up disappearing in season 2. So the fact that Iroh specifically like mentioned him at the end when they're paddling away, I picked up on that, and I was like, I wonder if he's gonna show up somehow in season 2, like in a prominent role.
Yeah,
probably not with Iroh and Zuko, because their story in season 2 is like one of them together, alone together.
Yeah.
But maybe we see G return to the Fire Nation and like celebrated as a hero and gets involved somehow and passes information along to Iroh and Zuko somehow, or something, right? Like, I think they handled his character, like, for such a minor character, like they added some really meaty elements that I hope that they continue with.
Yeah.
So that, like, we talk a lot about the differences between the animated and the live action, and oftentimes because the animated show was so good, I think we end up being critical of the live action. But I do think like there's stuff that they did here that works. Like G works. The scene of Lu Ten's funeral was absolutely heartbreaking and worked, and it was probably my favorite thing in this version. So there's stuff that is working for me.
Yeah, that's it. As you were saying, throwing out different ideas, I was just thinking a movie about the White Lotus Society, where like we sometimes see these things happening in the background, but like it's much more about all the stuff that was going on with that. I would love.
Yeah, I would like to not see anything more in this time period. Like within the story, sure, but like once you've done this one, like, oh, this is like the third pass through this time period. Like, you have a long history of avatars. Like, give me Kyoshi on screen. They wrote 2 novels,
Yeah.
And honestly, like, those are supposed to be darker. If you want to do darker stuff, do that,
Yeah. Give me,
like,
I mean, it's funny. So I was at a wedding earlier today, and I was talking to someone who had a really interesting perspective. We said, look, I loved Avatar, and I have a 5-year-old kid, and I was really excited to watch the show with them. And he watched like the first 30 seconds of the first episode and was like, I don't want my kid's going to have nightmares if they watch this, And I was like, Yeah, that sounds understandable. I would have watched it, but I'm not sure I'm the best example of like, how parents should raise you in terms of what they should watch.
Yeah,
So.
my dad took me to the Twilight Zone when I was 5.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think that's part of how we became friends, because your mother was one of the other ones who were like, yeah, it's fine what Pamela is showing the kids, like.
Yeah, I mean, we were teenagers, so no, I was just watching whatever I wanted. But
Yes, fair, but still.
There was one missing element that I want to touch on.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Master Paku and his sexism. I think it's okay. Like, his sexism is okay. Like, it is unfortunately an integral part of his character.
Right.
They tried to play it off as more of like the traditions of the tribe, I think.
Yeah, like it's a cultural thing.
Which spreads it out more, but then it made a little less sense when the women were like, no, let us fight. Because initially, like, not Hakoda, what's her name? Yagoda, the female master who was teaching Katara healing.
Yeah.
Which was a good scene, by the way.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But that made less sense to me, right? Because she also seemed to be like super into the traditions. And
yeah, that was totally out of nowhere.
There wasn't like an indicator that she was like, yeah, this sucks, but it's what we have to do. All of a sudden she's like we're gonna fight too. So but what was missing was that Paku has a past relationship with Gran. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they just like completely not there. They probably don't want to deal with that at all. But I don't know. Like, did you feel? I mean, you recognize it was missing. Like, how do you feel about that?
I definitely recognized it was missing, and I liked it a lot, and I thought that it gave him more of a direct connection to Katara in a way that I felt deepened the relationship and made some of the stuff around the sexism more powerful. But in terms of like the other like, if you told me again, if you said, hey, would you want 5 more minutes of Paka and I'm sorry, I get his name wrong. Paku of Paku and his backstory with Gran, or 5 more minutes that deepens Yue and Sokka, like, I want Yue and Sokka hands down. Like, so kind of like, was it missing? Yes, but on the list of things that I wanted this episode to have more of, there's other things that are higher on that list.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a direct through line, but it was kind of interconnected, right? Because it was this weren't they were betrothed. Paku and Gran were betrothed, and then she chose to leave him for the Southern Water Tribe guy.
Right.
So the whole like northern and southern tribes thing, it's like a
and also the idea of leaving your betrothed.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the absence, but also I will. Not so much that there are other things that I would have liked to see in this episode. Honestly, I would have liked to see more earlier. That's kind of where I really felt like. But, it is like, what do you add? What do you subtract? I think a lot of that, I think, is just going to be kind of preference. It's like, which stories are most important to you? Maybe season 2, they begin still at the Northern Water Tribe, and then they have a scene like that. Although, given that it's going to be like, I mean, this was shot in 2021.
Oh, wow.
Like,
really?
Yes. This is like more than 2 years ago. Maybe photography wrapped up late. Like you were talking about the creators of the original show. They left more than a year before filming started. That was like 2020, I think, when they left. And then it was 2021 that they finally started shooting. And I think they got it done pretty quickly. It was all in, I think it was mostly or all in Vancouver.
Production and filming began November 16th, 2021.
So it probably went into 2022 then.
Photography wrapped on June 17th, 2022.
Right. So less than 2 years ago, but almost 2 years ago. I mean, that's That's been some time. So when you see
That is.
the cast, particularly the younger cast members, like they don't look the same.
Aang's voice may have dropped an octave or two. Like,
right.
That's totally what happened.
But you would think so, right? I mean, it certainly could have, and it still can. There's still time.
I would like to change my answer. I do not want to see season 2. Because I like seeing that time frame. Like I am even more worried about what you've been talking about, Matthew, the Stranger Things problem of the kids growing up. That just seems like too much time.
I'll be curious.
I think you have to change the story a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they were trained. Maybe, like, because of all this, they've spent the last 2 years training, and we get a nice training montage.
Training montage.
Sylvester Stallone will sell the rights, the music. Get a little Eye of the Tiger going on.
I don't think he has the rights to that music.
No. He probably has the rights.
Survivor.
To the original song. Getting stronger.
Oh right. Yeah.
But we'll see. I will say actually that is one more reason why I want to see them. I want to see them at least do season 2, because season 2 is far and away my favorite, and has the addition of my favorite. Well, it's close to season 3, but I think season 2 is my favorite, and it has.
There's 3 seasons, and you're like 2 and 3. Well, they're close, but they're. But
I think season 2. But I'm saying that both of them are much higher than season 1.
Sure.
Like, if you ask me my top 10 favorite storylines from Avatar, maybe 1 or 2 of them are from season 1. Most of them are from season 2, and a couple are from season 3. And so, getting to see how is this group going to do Toph? How is this group going to do Ba Sing Se? Particularly because, frankly, I think the Ba Sing Se story is one of the most culturally relevant for today that I can think of, and so we'll see. I think, though, the other thing that all this conversation has really made me think about, kind of take a longer lens in all this, is, and I've been thinking about this in terms of both, like, going from animated to live action, from books to either animation or live action, and also from, like, smaller niche TV to big budget movie. I think stories that particularly have a kind of niche audience to them suffer the larger the audience is supposed to get. Just because, like, the quirkiness of some projects, you can get a couple 100,000 people or a couple million people to buy that book or to watch that show on Nickelodeon, or whatever. Like, and this show maybe is not the best example, but still, like, the audience that Netflix needs and the audience that is probably, like, numerous orders of magnitude bigger than what Nickelodeon needed at the time, And so I do wonder how much that also is a factor of, there are a lot of these things where it feels like someone is saying at some point, look, a lot of people liked this Ahsoka character on Rebels, but we want tons of the people who never watched Rebels to watch Ahsoka. So we've got to kind of broaden it out or, make it wider. And I do wonder if that was a part of this.
Are you commenting on basically the studioification of movie making and television making?
Yeah, I'm saying that I think there are a lot of projects, not all, but a lot, where the wider the audience gets, whether rightly or wrongly, a lot of times the studio will feel you have to kind of make it less quirky or less, like, you got to kind of round the edges some and make it more palatable for a more general audience.
Yeah, I think it's about money, obviously. It's about how much money they're putting into a thing. And it's about their perceptions about how broad an audience is going to be for a particular thing. Because I think they are deeply wrong on that over and over and over.
I agree.
Terms of, and it was 10 years ago or more that we had a similar conversation about who could and couldn't be a protagonist in a major budget studio film and have that film be successful, And I think back then I was like, I think anyone who's good, like, you tell a good story, you're gonna sell tickets. Like, you don't have to be within this, narrow band of identity or whatever. And like, I think they thought that for a long time, that it was one way. And similarly, I think they think that a certain type of story, that a story needs a certain type of universality to appeal to the masses. And I just don't think that's true. I think they're wrong on that. But they have the money, and that's how they make their decisions. But you see a lot of the things that become popular, it's like a lot of the things that like really blow up are things that don't hew so closely to what had been kind of the standard of mass appeal, and I think going for mass appeal maybe gives you the best shot at a kind of high mid or whatever, or low high kind of return on in terms of your audience. But like I do think there are a lot of things that appeal to a lot of people, and they don't need to be what the studios think they need to be, in my opinion. I think they're off base. But clearly it is about money and thinking, well, if we're spending this much money, we need this much audience in order to get a return on our investment. And I just think that they are confused about what sorts of things are really going to yield that.
Yeah. I think that's true.
But I agree with you that they try and then meddle and make things a particular way and sand off the edges, if you can call them edges, but what they see as the edges, what they see as the rough edges, which to me is like the character of the thing half the time.
Yeah. Like if you told me they were going to make Andor into another big budget movie, but make it so that like, the lines of good and bad were like clear, were a lot more clear, to be like, you're fundamentally missing the point, and it doesn't have to be that,
Yeah. But also like they spent a big budget budget on Andor.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Andor's just a freak. I mean, the fact that they actually are like, oh yeah, Tony, you could just make your show. It's cool. Oh, you just can't say that. You just have to say fight the Empire. You can't say the other thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll give him that. I know some of us think that's a better line anyway, and that's okay.
I fundamentally agree that I dislike studio meddling, and that term, like it's a broad term. Like basically, like having too many people in the process who aren't like directly involved. Like having people come in like and say, oh, like we need you to change this and that, like that's I believe like we all agree that that's what's going wrong with Marvel right now, is that they've gotten so full of themselves, like in the MCU, and now like everything has to be interconnected, and yet like the creators who are making individual movies or TV shows aren't given the chance to make their thing. Like they're being told what to make, and they're kind of like painting by numbers. So yeah, like absolutely, like for me personally, the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once just like completely changed everything in movies, and like what I believe a movie can be, and like what a studio will back and allow to happen is just unbelievable. And that was like a passion project, right? Like the people involved in that, no one was like very few people were looking over their shoulders going, oh, you have to change this and that. They just did it, and they loved what they were doing, and they made what they loved. And that's what we need more of.
And for whatever reason, let me just say on that one, for whatever reason, I was following a lot of like Hollywood press last year. And there were so many stories about like studio executives are totally baffled why Everything Everywhere is doing so well, because it broke all of the rules that you guys are talking about. Like everyone expected it would not do well because it didn't have, a white lead as the center. It didn't, it had a plot that was like all over the, like, imagine trying to write a synopsis of that movie that in any way captures what it's about. Like you can't. And there were all these interviews with executives, most of them anonymous, some of them not though, who were like, yeah, we have to learn. And some of them were like, we have to learn and change.
And then
others
copy
were like,
it.
And exactly. Right. And others were like, no, this is just a fluke. But they were like, yeah, this is not, by our math, this is not a movie that should have mass appeal.
Yeah, it was a Luke.
Yeah.
And what you have to do is not like try to copy the end result, but understand the process of the people who made that. So like I want to call out another project. So the actress who played Princess Yue, her name is Amber Midthunder, and I know her from a movie called Prey, which is
Mm.
in the Predator franchise. Like it was she plays a native, basically like a hunter who fights against a predator in like the 1800s, I think it was. And it was a fantastic movie. Like, you know, the Predator movies kind of like got campy and silly with Predator versus Alien, but this movie was so well made, and the people involved like all understood the project, understood
Yeah.
the assignment, and it was like I think it was largely or like all a native cast and crew, and so like it's a very similar thing to what we're talking about here with Avatar, right? With Asian and native people involved. So like I think one of the takeaways from this that I don't want to see happen in the narrative about this show is like, in my opinion, this show, like I've said, is like pretty medium, and like I'm not thrilled about it, but I'm glad it exists. But I don't want the narrative to be like, oh well, like you made this with Asian and native cast and crew, and it's not as good as the original, which had white people involved. And it's like, ugh, like I don't want that to
Yeah.
be the narrative, right? Like that's not the point of this, because there are projects, everything everywhere all at once,
Yeah.
Prey, like that were made with that care and with those people, those groups of people involved. So it's like, just let good people do what they're good at is kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's very fair.
And it's like that doesn't mean they're all going to be commercial successes, right? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
find people who have artistic vision, that know how to execute their artistic vision, let them
Absolutely.
make those things on reasonable budgets. Like Everything Everywhere All at Once, the production budget was like 25 million or less. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Prey was like 65 million. Like that's a lot of money. I mean,
But not
it's
for a
lot,
movie.
but not for a
Yeah.
movie. Exactly. Not for a
Yeah.
movie these days, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I
just like I'd rather see 10 movies made on $25 million budgets than one $250 million movie. Let
Yeah.
10 people tell their stories, and like maybe I'll like 2 or 3 of them and not like 8, but like that's
Yeah.
fine, right? Like instead of trying to make one thing that you think everybody's gonna like and people are like, yeah, it was all right,
Yeah. One of the things that most confuses me about this in some ways, and also tells me that like Netflix pays a lot of attention to some of its things, and some they're just like, whatever, it looks fun, let's put it on.
Mm-hmm.
Nimona, which is, I think, as much as I love Spider-Verse, like if this wins the Oscar for Best Animated, I will not be complaining at all, because it is one of my absolute favorite movies that I've seen in the last couple of years. And honestly, it feels the closest to the spirit of Avatar, of the original Avatar, The Last Airbender, of anything I've ever seen, in terms of it is very much about a child and an adult who are kind of working together to deal with something. It is childlike. It is incredibly irreverent. It is very silly at times. It's also probably the most powerful trans allegory and queer allegory that I've seen on film in the last 10 years. It made me sob numerous times. It is utterly gorgeous. The voice acting is phenomenal. And the world building is great. And I just kind of was like, why not do more like that? Like, and I think in this case, it was something that like, it was made totally separate, and then Netflix just bought it. And we're like, yeah, let's put it on. But yeah, and I think I wind up, here's I think where I wind up on the show. As a remake of Avatar: The Last Airbender, I'm willing to give it another shot in season 2, but so far I think it has not done a very good job of capturing what is the essence of Avatar, and in some cases is like going pretty far from it. If I kind of in my head just shift all the characters of the names of all the characters, and just think of it as just like its own show that exists in its own thing, I think it's pretty good. Not the best I've ever seen by any means, but enough acting and story beats that I'm like, yeah, I'm into more of this. How I feel after 2 years of analysis and not having it come out, who the hell knows? But we'll see.
Right. Yeah, I do feel like there's enough good stuff to make me want to see, okay, how do they do that scene?
Yeah.
How do these actors do that scene? How do they write that scene? Like how, I want to see how it goes down with Aang and Ozai, because this is a different Ozai, and Aang. It's interesting. Like, I know we've been not super high on Aang's performance, but I actually got someone to watch the first 2 episodes who hadn't really watched the animated series. I think she watched the first few episodes or whatever, but 8 years ago, and doesn't remember them that well. But so I got my mom to watch them, and she was actually like, "Oh, that kid's a pretty good actor,"
Yeah.
Just like thought that like it was good, and definitely thought that the ones that we thought were great were great. But like, she's enjoying the show, and she doesn't really have the animated series to compare it to, and to an extent, like, I envy that. I mean, on the other hand, I got to enjoy the animated series, so like I'll let her. She'll watch that afterwards, But like, just to have a perspective of like, I want to be like, how does it feel to watch this show without having this constant, this is different from that,
Bad acting, but especially bad child acting, gives me like that secondhand embarrassment cringe. It makes me like, not just like, oh, this is bad. Like, I'm physically uncomfortable.
Yes.
I never had that from this Aang.
Yeah, me too.
I was like, I'm not having the depth of feeling that I would want to have from this character. Maybe that's the acting. Maybe that's the dialogue, because he also had a lot of very on the nose lines.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just that, again, because we're not seeing him train. Like, to me, I feel like every season we really focus on Aang's relationship with a different character.
Yeah.
And season 1 is very much about his relationship with Katara. And that is fundamentally built on the training. And the fact that she sees herself as herself as more of a waterbender than he is, with good reason. But she's then in that situation of like, I've studied this for 5 years, and you're the greatest natural talent the world has seen for 100 years.
Right.
And there's some great episodes about like her frustration about that, and him also having like some arrogance and realizing how like so much of their relationship is expressed through their training. And I hadn't really thought of it much until you brought it up, Paul. But I think like that's probably another reason why we don't see a lot of great acting from Aang, because they gave him some great scenes with Gyozu and Gyatso. Thank you.
Sorry.
And in those scenes, I think Aang was good. I think Gyatso was, phenomenal, but there's like nothing about Aang's performance was taking away from it. Aang was like making a powerful part of that performance. I remember how I was kind of mad at Gyatso for leaving.
Yeah.
I that was true, because that actor really made me feel the pain of him, like how much he wanted to be able to see, his father friend again, and how hurt he was when that didn't happen. That's because of his acting. So
So maybe Liu Ten's funeral wasn't my favorite scene. I don't like. For me, if it's not obvious, like, I love feeling those like, I love crying when I watch TV. So those are the scenes that get me. But yeah, I agree, and I want to clarify, like, my criticism. Gordon's performance as Aang, like, is in a similar place to my overall feelings about this show, is that it's very mid, like a C plus. Like, I don't think they're bad. I don't think they're great, like I believe the original animated Avatar was. But this is like fun to watch, and I'll watch it because I enjoy the product.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Any other last words before we wrap up?
I talked about Paku. I'm trying to like think through these, especially like these last 2 episodes. Yeah, I don't know. Like, going forward, like, I guess I would ask listeners, going forward, how far do you think they will deviate from the animated show? Because I threw out a few suggestions of like things that might be different, right? Like, Zhao could be alive. Like that's a very different story. Lieutenant G, like actually being a character would be a different story. Like,
Yeah.
and we also have the deviation of the Aang not waterbending at this point.
Yeah.
In the storyline, right? Like, how does that play out, and how does that impact a season 2?
Yeah.
Does he have to spend time learning waterbending, or do we think we just get a shortcut where at the beginning of the show they're like, it's been 6 months and Katara has taught me waterbending?
Right. That would be rough for me. Like, because for me, like the student teacher relationship, particularly in things like that and like skills and like martial arts type things, is like very meaningful to me and has had a big role in my life on both sides of that as a student and a teacher. And to just like not have that at all, it feels to me like just being robbed of such an important part of the story, and making Aang such a natural talent that he slacked off on his airbending. Like, really? Like, and I feel like that's another one of those, like, you're not necessarily giving a great message. You know, that like the people who are great at these things, it's just because they have so much natural talent.
So if you're not like a black belt within your first 3 karate lessons, kid, like, give up because you're not one of the natural talents. Like, that's terrible.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. Go ahead.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, like, it also shortchanged Katara as a character.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Because I think one of the things, like, we talk about is, like, you learn by teaching. Like, you can become better yourself by teaching to other people. Absolutely. And that was completely missing from this season.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think it may also shortchange my favorite character, with the exception of Zuko, maybe, Toph, because so much of what makes Toph's interaction with Aang so interesting is that her style, she's the person who's going to wind up teaching him earthbending, at least does in the animated. Her style is so radically different than Katara's.
Yeah.
And it's really rough for Aang to adjust to.
Yeah.
And I feel like if we haven't seen a lot of Katara training him,
yes.
that's all going to feel weird.
Yeah. There was an episode devoted to Katara teaching Toph how to teach Aang, because she's been doing it this whole time.
And them like fighting over that and that friction. And so their relationship, so much of their relationship early on especially, is about their relationships as both being teachers to Aang and being like, no, you have to do it this way. Well, that's not how earthbending works, blah, blah, blah. And like, that takes away from both of those characters in 2 ways, right? It's like we lose 3 relationships that way, or at least really 2. At least
it's unfortunate, but like, I think they're just going to have to summer vacation it.
I think so.
And come back at the beginning of season 2 and be like, it's been X months and Katara has been teaching Aang waterbending. I don't see a way around that, really. Like, there's no way to fit that in.
Honestly,
in a satisfying way.
Given the production schedule, like, that's how I would write it if I picked up in season 2 and said, okay, what do I do with where we are and where our actors are and everything? Okay, we're gonna have to say that's what happened, and
especially because
it'll be a good patch.
Yeah,
especially because, as we've seen, this show is very happy to do a bunch of flashbacks.
Right.
But I don't know if you can shoot flashbacks to Katara treating Aang if the actor of Aang is now 2 feet taller than he was before.
The camera angles. You just got to Peter Jackson it. You know?
Peter Jackson it. That's the thing. The other thing I was going to bring up, which, oh God, what the hell was this? The budgets, the live action stuff. I had one other thought I wanted to bring up that was just so related to all of this, and now it's completely out of my head. And I hate that this is going out live. It's not going out live. It's going to be in the YouTube.
Yeah.
Was it one other point?
You can cut things easily on YouTube. You know, snip.
We're talking about. Sorry, I just really want to make sure I don't forget this. But we're talking about Katara. We're talking about Aang and the teaching.
Is it about who do they get to play Toph?
No, it was about Katara and Aang. Oh yeah. No, I totally lost it. Okay, never mind. I know. I'm sure I'll think of it. 5. You know what? I'll make someone up and write it in as feedback. That's here's the question.
Perfect. I do have 2 things.
All right, so we'll go back to that.
When you asked earlier.
Yeah.
One, I thought there was
let me.
Go ahead.
All right. So, Paul, what about you? Last things you want to wrap up with?
Yeah, so I got two things. One's short, one's short. One was like what I felt like was actually a pretty good sequence of dialogue between Zuko and Iroh, where Iroh's like, "So do you have a plan?" And then Zuko's like, "Plan? Yeah, I have a plan. It's to show that my father wasn't wrong to trust me with his job, blah, 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 blah." And Iroh's like, "So no plan." And,
So good. So good.
the delivery, I was like, that's well written and it's
Mhm.
perfectly delivered. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I need to give the writers some credit there. I mean, unless it was improvised, but it didn't feel improvised. It felt like,
Yeah.
it just felt like a well executed levity in a spot that was pretty, within a serious part of the show. So that worked for me. The other one was, I really appreciated that they didn't focus too much on Sokka's bigotry, and that he overcame it pretty quickly, by which I mean that he really cared about Momo, instead of just wanting to eat him all the time. So, he overcame his speciesism there. And I actually found that like Momo bit, I was like, oh, you're not going to kill Momo. Like, you can't cost that much to CGI or whatever.
So I figured if Momo was dead there once again, I was like, all right, batten down the hatches.
There's no
Paul's going to have some
2.
things to say.
Yeah, I'm finding out all the writers, and I'm not watching anything they make ever again. No, but so, yeah, I like they let Momo be a hero, and then they let Sokka help save Momo, and that, and they healed him and everything. I was like, okay. All right, that was nice. That was a nice moment. And that's to me, that's like that shows how like you can have like just a little 1 minute segment that really does a lot, right? Like I don't need 5 scenes like that, but just one scene like that tells me a lot.
Yeah, I think it's true. 2 last things that I did remember. So let's start again. 2 last things that I had. One very small, and the other a little bit bigger. I can't understand why no one thought of this before, but using waterbending to make ice cream has been one of my favorite. Like, of course you would do that. That's so brilliant. Like, I love that so much. But the other one is, as I said, I am really interested in what they're doing with Ozai, Azula, Zuko, and this idea that whereas in the Avatar, when the animated, he's basically pretty much written off Zuko until maybe. Whereas in the animated, he's pretty much written off Zuko. Oh my god. Whereas in the animated version, he has pretty much written off Zuko. In this one, it does seem like he's playing the two off against each other. So when Zhao gives Zuko the speech that he gives in the animated, almost word for word, about, no, your father isn't interested in you. You're done. He's just looking at Azula. At first, I was like, wait a minute, you're betraying the whole thing you've set up. Until I realized, wait a minute, Zhao has all of his information from Azula. And so actually this makes total it actually, I thought, if the writers were as smart as I'm giving them credit for, which I think they were, this is brilliant because it shows A, that Azula is manipulating Zhao all over the place, B, that we still have Zuko hearing this and thus having to deal with believing that, even though we, the audience, know that something different's happening. So I really liked how they did that, and especially if that's what they were doing. If they were just like, yeah, let's have him give that speech because it was a great speech and animated, without realizing what they've been doing the whole time until then I'm a lot more disappointed. But I want to give them more credit than that.
I think it's fair to interpret it the way you do, and I don't see any reason to care what they meant. Like, if it works for you, exactly. It works for you. That's great, and I can see that.
Yeah. Well, in the end, it only matters given how they tell the story going forward.
That's true. That matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's the same writers, even, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
Sometimes showrunners change, and although supposedly all the season 2 scripts are ready in case they get greenlit, I'm like, you don't want any feedback?
Oh my god.
You're not going to listen to our podcast? No, but I mean, I don't really want writers to listen too much to feedback, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
I think there's some value to it, but I think it can probably kind of hamper in some ways as well.
Yeah. I have definitely seen shows where I got the impression that the writers listened too much to the critics. Not even shows. I think that was part of what happened with the Star Wars movies in terms of like the incredibly negative feedback that people got and how that affected things. I think that was more the studio than the writers. But yeah, I've also definitely seen things where writers get really badly attacked and then feels like they get gun shy or they're, too much in their head. Well, again, thank you both so much. You guys have just recorded, almost 9 hours of podcasts over 2 days, over 4 days. I'm so grateful. It's actually more like 7 hours, but I'm either way, whatever it is.
Just round up. It's fine. There's the fifth one too from earlier days.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, we're like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to both of you. Both these people create amazing stuff. Links are in the show notes. Please check all that kind of stuff out. Of course, please check out all the other things we're doing on Ethical Panda. It is now 11:30 at night, and I now have to edit us talking for 2 hours because these two folks just wouldn't show up. I didn't help either, but I couldn't imagine anyone better to have covered this with. Thank you guys all so much. Yep, motherfucker.
I don't know how to follow that up. I do want to just say, like, I've really enjoyed talking about this show with the two of you, and it's greatly added to my enjoyment of the show, which was kind of mid in the first place, but overall it's been a strong positive experience, the whole thing combined. So
awesome.
Yeah, I'm very glad we did this. Thank you so much for creating this space.
Yeah.
And having us on.
It's too bad the two of you don't share any other interests that we can talk about.
I like chess. I don't know.
Yeah, that was sarcasm.
I haven't played chess in a long time. Oh, yeah. I don't know.
All right.
Show.
Actually signing off now. Yep.
Right.
To everybody.
I am the one.
I am the two.